and it doesn't go back to the people and the chaos that we saw a few months ago. Thank you so much, Sarah, for covering.
Thank you.
Now, a bit of good news on a story that we've also been bringing you for the past 2 years. It looks like there's progress on the trade war between the world's two largest economies, and it will be made official next week. Now, according to a growing number of reports, a Chinese delegation will travel to Washington for a 4-day stay to sign Phase 1 of the trade deal. Now, in a tweet, President Donald Trump said the ceremony will be January 15th at the White House. Then Phase 2 of the deal will be signed later in Beijing. So to talk about what this could mean for the two sides and what we can expect, we turn to former official in the United States Trade Representative's office, Steve Gill. Thanks for joining us, Steve.
Hey, Scotty.
Okay, so we have the first round of a deal. We don't know all of the details, but does it accomplish at least partial what the president was looking to do? And do you think this announcement is being rushed?
Well, I think it's a big deal, and I think that you're seeing that reflected with kind of the enthusiasm around the globe with this deal, hopefully reducing some of the friction between U.S. and China. I don't think it's rushed because you may recall back in the summer, we thought we had a deal, and the Chinese backed off from it when it started being put into writing, particularly on the intellectual property and the currency manipulation issues. So they kind of went back to the drawing board. President Trump stood tough, and they finally got the Phase 1 that increases dramatically the amount of goods that are being purchased by China. About $50 billion in agricultural goods will be purchased. They made some progress on intellectual property and on the currency manipulation issues, but there is more to be done there. But I think wisely they're locking in the wins that they get now, and then they can come back and get another bite of the apple after this new year ends.
Well, is this not also a trust process, like two people in a relationship? Is this why they are doing it in phases? They want to see that people are going to uphold the standards that they put. Or is it just better to announce one finished plan and hope that it just works?
Yeah, and I think that trust issue has always been a big factor. You know, making sure that the Chinese do what they promised to do has been a sticking point in these negotiations from the outset. In fact, some of the terms that were going to be put in to roll back the tariffs before the deal was put in place was simply unacceptable to the U.S. They want to make sure China will do what China promises to do. So go ahead and lock in the trade goods, go ahead and lock in the purchase of items, get some progress on intellectual property and on foreign currency manipulation, and then get back to the table while you see if those first phase terms are met, and then you can try to do a little bit better as you negotiate more.
Steve, as you hear some of the details, and granted, we do not have verbatim what the first part of this phase of this deal is going to be, is there any sign that this is going to help level out the trade deficit that has existed between the United States and China?
I think it will. It'll increase what China is buying from us. But keep in mind, China is expanding their operations and their influence in places like Africa. They are not retrenching as we get a deal that's better between the U.S. and China, more fair between these two countries. They're continuing to expand their global presence, just as the United States is. So there's going to continue to be friction between these two major economic powers, particularly as China tries to, exercise their strength in the Asian region and, again, expand into places like Africa. The good thing, I think, for the United States is that while the China-U.S. trade deal is important, we do more trade with Canada and Mexico than we do with China. So the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement that has just been inked and is getting ready to go into effect, the new trade deals with Japan that are beneficial to us also have a big impact. And I think as we see the Brexit move in England move ahead, there's going to be a new trade deal with England pretty quickly. That will also open up opportunities for more U.S. goods, U.S. services. So for the United States, this is all good news. And as we kind of expand into the new year, I think it's going to be a good economic year for the United States with these trade deals starting to be felt sooner rather than later.
Well, I do like the good news, at least in the trade front, as that's been a place of contention for so many months now. However, there is ongoing trouble in the Middle East. As you've listened to the show, you've heard us cover many of those issues. And there is going to be an effect here in the United States. Are you expected to see kind of this long-term effect pending on our oil, pending no additional major events happening? Or do you think just the fear is enough to drive up prices for the next few months and kind of cause chaos within the oil markets?
Well, I think you're going to see the next, several months, 6 months to 9 months, be a lot of question marks about what's happening with the gold prices, what's happening with the oil prices. But if this had happened 5 years ago, 10 years ago, it would have had a much more dramatic effect on the U.S. economy. We are now a net exporter of oil. We're not as dependent on the Middle East oil as we were. And frankly, when the oil prices go up, U.S. companies will also benefit from that because we're now a seller, not just a buyer. So while the impact of the Middle East and the friction that's going on there will have a big impact in Europe, will have a big impact in South America and in the Middle East, the economic impact on the U.S. will be diminished by the fact that we're not as dependent upon them for our oil as we were 5 or 10 years ago.
Well, good, because I really hope that I don't have to get rid of my big SUV and dive into my children's college fund to help pay those $4 a gallon gas that I remember not so long ago. Thank you so much, Steve, for joining us.
Thanks, Scotty.